Musical Talk, the UK's independent musical theatre podcast.
Welcome to Musical Talk. My name is Tim Saywood, and how lovely it is to be back here talking to you. I'm here, of course, with Thos Ribbits.
That's Sir Thos Ribbits!
Or Pope Thos Ribbits, as I'm sure in the not-too-distant future you will be.
Well, that's because we're going to be pontificating.
We will be pontificating today, and also thinking our way through the great theological issues of the day, basically, through the medium of the musical.
As in, God, I love musicals.
I suppose so, yeah. You've seen a few of them lately, and I've been a little bit absent from the musical stages lately, or indeed from the audiences, from the auditoria, but you've been very busy going off to see things. What have you seen recently?
Well, I've seen a few things. I'll tell you what was interesting. I went to see one of the very first shows I went to see as an adult, because it's been revived in London, which is the Jonathan Miller version of the Mikado at the English National Opera.
And of course you're still an adult, so in theory you should get exactly the same experience, but did you?
Well, actually that was what was interesting to me. I mean, the story is that I was very much into Gilbert and Sullivan, as you can imagine, as a teenager.
Yeah.
They were my...
Hang on, I think we should give the audience just a few moments to imagine that.
It's better if they do it in black and white.
Yes. So as a teenager, and so you're returning...
Yes, and when it was brand new when I went to see it. I went to see it with Eric Idle as Coco. If you remember rightly, it was odd. It was Gilbert and Sullivan revived in a way that had never really been revived on the tail end of sort of Joseph Papp's revolutionary Pirates of Penzance.
At the Public Theatre in New York, one of my...
That's right, yeah. And came over to London, I think, with Frank Thornton playing...
Captain Peacock?
Yeah, Captain Peacock playing the Brigadier, the Brigadier General.
So hang on, let's just say...
Modern Major General, I should say. I'm so sorry.
So this is in many ways the same production. So Jonathan Miller directed it in what year was that?
87, I think. 86, 87.
Okay, so here we are... 30,
it is.
Sorry,
well, it was the 25th...
terrible,
it's the 25th revival, although it isn't actually 25 years, it's 26
so
years.
The silver anniversary of... which, of course, is what had already happened at that stage to Jonathan Miller's hair, and of course it's more so now. He just as a quick side note before we get into the actual production itself, he of late has been sort of complaining that he never gets jobs anymore, does he, basically? Do you think this is why he's come back to doing an old production?
Well, actually, he didn't redirect it. It's a revival with his original direction, and in the programme...
So he hasn't even got that. It's a reconstruction, a bit like when they reconstruct Fokine's choreography or Frederick Ashton ballets or...
Exactly. Well, that is exactly... it's at the English National Opera, that's how they do it. I mean, and this is not the first time it's been revived. It gets revived every few years. But here we are, the 25th anniversary. It's exactly the same direction. In one or two cases, exactly the same cast.
Right.
Richard Angus played the Mikado in a huge fat suit, which of course has become very common in theatre these days with the woman in white.
I never spotted that in... When I recently see Les Mis the film, they didn't have someone in a huge fat suit.
But of course you see fat suits and indeed drag suits in Hairspray. It's become fairly common.
That's true.
But actually, the first time I ever saw a fat suit, he looks like he's wearing a pillow, essentially, the size of a duvet. And some of the cast are obviously new, but it's exactly the same as the 87 version. Richard Stewart, who's a famous Gilbert and Sullivan comic actor. He does the comic roles over and over again, and I've had the privilege of working with him at the Cadogan Hall, actually, ladies and gentlemen.
All right.
Drop that name. Took over from Eric Idle in the original run as Coco. For me, what was interesting was that I thought that this time, whereas I'd been absolutely wowed by Eric Idle in the role of Coco playing the character very much like a Monty Python character. And then I had seen it again quite quickly in the 80s with Richard Stewart and enjoying it again, although it's relatively a carbon copy of the Eric Idle interpretation, which obviously all came out from the original Jonathan Miller direction. It's now starting to feel its age, whereas the rest of the show hasn't. Coco, the central character, actually is a bit hackneyed. It seemed to me. I actually felt that it could be de-Eric Idleized with some success, whereas the splendidly understated Mikado by Richard Angus, which had left me, if you pardon the expression, relatively flat in 1987 in a way that the character wasn't. I now got a great deal more out of as an adult, and presumably also over 25 years, he's mastered every nuance he can get out of it.
Yeah.
So I was delighted by it because I hadn't seen it for 20 odd years. And all the innovation of false perspective sets because there's lots of fake floors going up. And,
Oh, right, yeah.
Set in a 1920s hotel. It's a black and white musical. They're all dressed in black and white.
Oh, nice.
Because it's supposed to be. Basically, the inspiration is a Jack Buchanan British musical film of the 20s and 30s,
Right.
which would have been in black and white. And
Jack Buchanan being a well-known comic of the era, and
singer comic. He was the Fred Astaire. He was the British Fred Astaire.
he did "You Sweet So and So" was a big number of his.
That's
believe.
right, a Gershwin's number. That's
Yes,
right.
that's
And also, Everything Stops for Tea is one of his big hits.
Okay.
It has one of my favourite. In the original recording, he has this sort of languid way on that song, and he's trying to stop for tea, and people keep disturbing him. And this chap comes up and says, "Oh, Mr. Buchanan," because he's in character. "Mr. Buchanan, can I have your autograph?" And he said, "Oh, must you?" And he said, "Well, I've come an awfully long way." And he said, "Well, it's equally distant back, isn't it?"
So, for those of us who are not GNS aficionados, and I have tried to watch a few of them, but I'm afraid, no closer to liking them at all. In a sort of 10-second nutshell, what is
Cocoa nutshell?
A coconut shell, yes. What's the premise, plot? What happens in the Mikado?
Oh, right. Well, briefly, it's not for nothing that it's considered to be Gilbert's greatest work, in the sense that it's a piece of Gilbertian topsy-turvydom. There's a town where the Mikado is the king, the emperor of Japan. For whatever reason, he has decreed an arbitrary law, which is that anyone who flirts will be beheaded.
Right.
And so this town doesn't agree with that law. They want to carry on flirting. This is titipu. So they take the next man who's in line to be executed for flirting and make him headsman. For we said, who's next to be decapitated cannot cut off another's head until he's cut his own off. And there's lots of jokes about that.
Right.
And he is engaged to be married to one of the three little maids.
This is Coco, presumably, yes.
But then you've got Nanki Poo, who's the young hero, who turns out to be the son of the Mikado, but incognito, falls in love with one of the little maids. And the question is, the rest of the play is entirely about who's going to get the little maid, and if they do get married, does anyone have to be executed? And then the Mikado turns up to demand an execution, so it's a farce.
Oh, I see.
Essentially, that's what it is.
Okay.
And everybody is paired off at the end, although not necessarily with the person they thought they were going to get at the beginning.
No, well,
Coco, being the comic character, ends up with the Harridan character, who's Catty Shah.
Yeah.
And his last line is, "You've got a very good bargain in me," which, because he's a tailor, he's really a 2-bit tailor, so it's all very low key.
Okay.
The plot works. It's a good example of a Gilbertian plot.
Yes,
The
which
score
fits very well in with the sort of whole music hall and a little bit later the sort of early film type of premise, which is clearly the...
And it's very bright and it's very breezy. I tell you what's very interesting about this version of the Mikado, and it's something I liked the first time I saw it in the 80s, had forgotten about, and now loved again when I saw it, which is the fact that because it's a musical and Jonathan Miller's added a bit of sort of Busby Berkeleyism, there's tap dancers. So the chorus, who are the bellboys and the maids in the hotel, come on and do tap dancing routines to the chorus numbers.
Ah.
And they do these star jumps, the kind of thing you'd expect to see from a Busby Berkeley. And what that does, however, it adds an odd kind of post-fact syncopation to the piece. Because Sullivan isn't syncopated, as you can imagine.
No, it's very much the opposite of syncopated, really. I mean,
yes, it is. It's the
very
bumpity
regular
bumpity
rhythms,
bump.
yes, yeah.
But this tap dancing overlays something on top of that. Certainly a different set of rhythms.
Oh, okay,
so at least you get a
see.
counter rhythm, even if it's not a syncopated rhythm, if you get my drift.
Yes, so it does make the whole thing feel jazzier.
It does, and it's amazing how much that feels more jazzy, those sections. They really come to life, those chorus scenes, partly because of the energy, but partly because you're hearing, even if a lot of Gilbert Sullivan fans know their Gilbert and Sullivan backwards, as indeed do I. So when you hear it differently, you're forced to listen to it more carefully, and you don't take it for granted. And, GNS, for all its faults, is often... hasn't been done that differently over the years, and certainly not musically, even when it's been a clever idea has been added to the direction. Very rarely has it been. I think only the Hot Mikado or the Black Mikado has ever really done it slightly differently.
Yes,
when they've added syncopation.
There's Pirates as well, isn't there? Which is a more
there is. Yeah. Somebody told me recently. In fact, it's our old friend of this program, John Sweeney, who lives in America. He went to see Hollywood Pinafore, which was the syncopated version of HMS Pinafore, which had obviously been written immediately after the success of the Hot Mikado in the 1940s. But his verdict was it was not very good.
Oh, okay.
and in fairness, it hasn't come down to history like the Hot Mikado has.
No.
So, but taking us back to this, you've still got it's the original orchestrations, so it sounds like that, but with this extra layer on top, and I was delighted by that. It was very good.
That's good.
And of course, Jonathan Miller won't miss a trick for comedy. So
no, of course. I'm surprised they didn't go further then and perhaps do some more jazzy sort of or different instrumentation. But there's obviously sort of a balance to tread between the traditional,
well, particularly
the expectations of the audience, and
and it's at the English National Opera, of course.
Yes.
You know, you wouldn't really call the Mikado an opera, but it's best of breed in the world of operetta, in an English operetta.
Yeah.
So you can see how it's sort of jumped into the E&O's canon.
Yes.
But then, if you then took it into the world of musicals further, you would
That would
probably
be a whole
you'd be
different-
taking it out.
That
of
would
it.
be a very new thing. It would be a big recontextualisation.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you probably wouldn't expect that at the E&O.
So, I mean, you said basically earlier that other than the characterisation of Coco, which you said was starting to feel dated, the rest of it really felt as if it could have been contrived at this particular time now.
It was very, very fresh. It was remarkably fresh. I was so surprised. And it was partly nostalgia, though, because I remember feeling exactly the same way as I did in the 80s, but having forgotten it, I was then experiencing those emotions newly.
Yeah.
Not Anthony Newley, but newly. But they were also at the same time a repeat. It was a strange sense of fresh déjà vu.
What do you think makes companies want to revive things? 25
Money.
years after. Yeah, I was gonna.
Next thing.
Okay. Fine.
No, it's once again, it's best of breed. I mean, the Mikado will always be done in its Japanese sense, and indeed,
Yes.
when I saw it in Edinburgh last year, very nice version, but everyone was doing it in the Japanese original, as it were.
Yes.
Japanese style original, anyway.
Yep.
Although I think you once told me a story about the music, the very few moments when it pretends to be truly Japanese, it isn't.
I believe at the beginning part, I once listened to it with someone sitting next to me who was Japanese, and it's the beginning part. If you want to know who we are gentlemen of Japan, and yes, they broke into spontaneous laughter and said, "This is Chinese music."
Yeah.
And
Yes.
said it doesn't really sound anything like Japanese music, but there we are.
This,
It was the mysterious Orient from
Yes.
the Victorian perspective, wasn't it?
but they weren't so specific about the countries.
They weren't
yeah.
so bothered, yeah. Well, given that a lot of our panto tales, like Aladdin, for example, we can't tell whether that's set in Saudi Arabia or China,
And sometimes both.
and
you know.
sometimes
Yes,
both
yes.
at once. It's not too surprising. There was a little bit of confusion, but yes, it's true. It's not an authentic Japanese musical. No manga adaptation coming out, unless there already has been one, which there probably has.
But it's interesting, the E&O never did anything else with the Gilbert and Sullivan canon. I wouldn't have expected them to go to some of the more obscure items like Princess Ida, but you'd have thought they might have had a go at Pirates of Penzance,
Yes.
which is, the other really famous one.
Well, that's been sort of mucked around with, hasn't it, as it
Yeah,
were, lately.
Joseph
The
Papp.
famous, and also the all-male production of the Pirates of Penzance.
Oh,
that
indeed.
was a few years ago, and there
Yes.
have been quite a few different ways to spin Gilbert and Sullivan. Obviously, you felt that this is a very sympathetic way to do it, in the sense that the type of plot also happened to fit the sort of the context, the film context that they put that in.
Nothing strained too much.
No, exactly. And generally, did that work? I mean, for Gilbert and Sullivan?
Yeah. Actually, I don't buy this
Can you
idea.
just put it like in, I mean, I know that, for example, the Gondoliers, there's some songs where they change the topical references, and the Opera Australia version that I watched the other day put lots of references to sort of, contemporary stars of the 90s as it was then.
And indeed, there's actually a song which has license to do that specifically in the Mikado, which is "I've Got a Little List," which is famously it's a song about which people should be executed first if we have to get down to executing, and of course it's written pretty much weekly, or possibly daily in certain circumstances. Richard Stewart actually writes those updated lyrics,
I'd be very interested
and he does them very well.
Do you recall who who was on that little list? This last time that you saw it?
You mean when I saw it in January?
When you saw it just recently, yeah.
Well, I think in the 80s there was a reference to Jeffrey Archer.
Yes.
As you might expect.
Yes.
I don't actually remember who was given the references.
It wasn't Psy or...
No, you mean the Gangnam
Star,
Gentleman? Yes. No, I don't actually remember what his comedy lyric, but I know that it got big laughs.
Yes.
So it was,
Well, they're just all people you hadn't heard of because you've just got too old, and you no longer have your finger on the pulse of contemporary culture in the way that you did when Jeffrey Archer was current.
You may say that, but you're remembering this is in the context of the English National Opera for a Gilbert and Sullivan, so I was still one of the younger people in the audience.
80 years old
Yes.
people, yeah, okay.
Actually, I say
Maybe
that
they didn't bother updating it. It all still felt very topical.
I will
Having a go at the Green Goddess and people like that.
Crikey, yes.
And Mr. Motivator.
But I must tell you, actually, that I was quite pleased by the demographic in the audience, because it wasn't absolutely homogenously white BBC Radio 4 listeners.
It's obvious to me that Gilbert and Sullivan keeps getting revived like a zombie, and it clearly does find a new audience, because I mean its
How could you
original
do it
audience
otherwise?
must be dead by now.
Yes.
For a good century or more, if
Probably. I mean, let's be honest. The authors are.
There was a long period when sort of Gilbert and Sullivan there was a Gilbert and Sullivan society in almost every town in the provinces, and now that's sort of fallen away basically in most places, but there's still an audience, and
indeed.
And presumably young people keep being added. Why do you think that is? Because it's incomprehensible to me.
Well, actually, I was speaking to a director of a show, and I can't remember who it was, but she said Gilbert and Sullivan is the hereditary hobby.
Okay.
She said that she thinks it's passed down from the parents to the children. They get roped in when parents do it at the opera, either go or perform.
Yes.
And then they get a taste for it. And it's certainly true to a degree. Regular on this programme, my good friend Jerry and Liz Pinnell, that seems to be what happened to them. They were raised in a Gilbert and Sullivan family. They are now Gilbert and Sullivan fans themselves and get involved and direct and perform. And long may that continue. It isn't true for me, however.
No.
I found it of my own accord.
Right.
My parents, whilst they don't dislike it, I introduced them rather than they introduced me. It was never part of my childhood.
What do you think is the crossover, though, between the opera audience and the light opera audience? Or is there one? Do you think these are different people going to see these things? Or do you think...
I do. Well, if I take myself as an example, I never go to the English National Opera except to watch something light, like the Mikado's. The Mikado's the one I would go and see.
It's not the same people who sit through the whole ring cycle and...
It might be, but on the whole, not. I mean, actually, let's be honest. Gilbert and Sullivan is not the highest brow. It's very good middle brow.
Yes.
And if we're talking Richard Wagner, that's higher brow, and it is my experience that people who have the higher brow, on the whole, will look down on those who only have the middle brow. Whereas those of us who have the middle brow can't quite make our way up to the higher brow. So I think it's a separate. No, honestly, I think brows are like class.
So there's probably some people who are.
Oh, of course, there's some overlap
in both camps, but yes.
And camp is the word for both of them. Yes.
Yes, certainly Wagner. Fascinating. Okay, well.
My word, you seem to have squeezed out some insincerity there. You're agog with apathy.
So there we are, the Mikado. We can hopefully look forward to that once again in 2037 when they do the next 25 years have gone past.
I'll be there.
Yes, exactly. And you can tell us, you can see if you can try and remember who the actual names of the list of people are, and if you do, in fact, recognise them at that point. But we have to go...
Is it Eric Pickles?
We have to go backwards in time. Well, of course, Peter Lilly from the Tory cabinet one time had
he
a
did the little list, didn't he?
Yes.
But that was excruciatingly poor.
It was. Going backwards in time, however, from the Mikado, but also forwards in time, in as much as... well, look, basically, what I want to talk about next is the Irving Berlin musical Top Hat, which began life as an RKO motion picture, but has, for the first time recently, become a stage musical. And, yeah, so it's sort of going the opposite way in the sense that they did the Mikado as a sort of film version of a stage thing, but it was on a stage. This started on as an actual film and is now being a stage. What I'm trying to say is... Just tell us about it.
Well, actually, it's funny you should say that, because I said earlier that Jack Buchanan was the British Fred Astaire, and Top Hat was a Fred Astaire Ginger Rogers film.
Yes.
And they were contemporaries, and indeed they worked together on The Bandwagon, which is my second favourite film musical of all time.
Everyone was into that.
But, so someone has decided, I think on the strength of stage adaptations of films like Singing in the Rain, which has been around for a while, but is big in London at the moment.
Yes.
And a few other versions of things like that. Someone said, well, why aren't we doing this with Fred Astaire instead of Gene Kelly? What's the best Fred Astaire Ginger Rogers film? And it is, by common consent, Top Hat is supposed to be sort of the pinnacle of their sort of decade, the 1930s.
Just for those who are not that familiar with it, what sort of songs are in it? Is Top Hat, White Tie and Tails in it?
It is, although that's not from the show. It's added. Sorry, it's not from the film.
Yes.
The film's only got something like 7 songs in it. Okay. They've had to pad it out with other Berlin songs, so it's in an odd way. It's a jukebox.
Take my breath away.
I don't remember Irving Berlin wrote that.
Song. Sorry, yes.
So there's a whole list of songs.
Okay, so let's read a few out from the programme that you've very kindly put in front of me here.
Well, isn't this a lovely day to be caught in the rain?
Oh, yes. Well, that's from which film?
Top Hat.
That one's from Top Hat. Okay, right, sorry. Let's just go from the top here. So in Act 1, you get Puttin' on the Ritz.
Which was actually a Tim Panally number, not originally written for a musical, although it's been put in lots ever since.
Of course.
And indeed, it opens with the famous Fred Astaire shooting down images of himself all dancing in synchronisation. It wasn't him doing so, but the central character, Jerry Travers, was dancing with a chorus. It was all very...
The sheer number of Royal Variety performances that must have appeared in as well.
Indeed.
No Strings, I'm Fancy Free is in there.
That's from the original.
I'm Putting All My Eggs in One Basket.
Also from Top Hat.
Isn't This a Lovely Day to Be Caught in the Rain, which, as you say, was from the film. You're Easy to Dance With, was that one original?
No, that's not original. It's an Irving Berlin number. All the numbers are Irving Berlin. And Fred Astaire sang it, but he sang it in a 1940s film.
Oh, right, okay. What is Love?
It's a song I didn't know. It's an Irving Berlin number, but I didn't recognise it at all.
Oh, okay.
But certainly not from the original.
And then, of course, just the location you'd expect it to be in at the end of Act 1 is top hat, white tie and tails.
I've just got an invitation through the mails. Your presence requested this evening. It's formal. Top hat, white tie and tails.
That was done at a Royal. I think it was a Royal Variety. Or it might have been a secret policeman's ball. Willie Rushton did it. Do you remember his version?
No, I don't.
He's dressed as if he's just sort of got out of the bath, so to speak, but just a little bit more decently. And he begins to sing through the song, "I'm putting on my top hat, straightening," and so on. And then he stops the pianist after a couple of verses and says, "There's nothing in there about putting on trousers, is there?" So he's forced to leave on his way to the thing, wearing no trousers. And then, looking into Act 2, it was a sidetrack. The Piccolino, is that?
Piccolino is. The Piccolino is, as you can tell from its title, a dance number. I mean, It's got a song, it's got lyrics. But like all the dances and all the musicals of that period, they all had to have, the continental, the karaoke. This is the Piccolino.
The Piccolino means, of course, the very little thing, basically, doesn't it? It's basically the translation, because a piccolo is a tiny flute, and then Piccolino is a diminutive even of that.
Although the song means nothing compared to that. I mean, Irving Berlin is possibly one of the most simplistic of the lyricists. That by which I mean to say that
underrated.
Yeah, exactly.
Very underrated skill.
The songs always work. They're just brilliant numbers, each and every one of them, for better or for worse. But then they don't have the levels of complexity of Cole Porter. But as you say, the ability to write a simple song which works is amazing. So he doesn't have a reputation of Ira Gershwin for clever rhymes or Cole Porter for clever funny rhymes, but all his songs are just on the money.
Is memorable. Yeah, okay. We've also got "Wild About You."
Once again, not a song that comes from Top Hat.
"Cheek to Cheek," which is that not from another film entirely? I'm sure is it not heard in The Gay Divorcee, or have I imagined that? Which is also a Fred and
it is.
Ginger film.
Yeah, The Gay Divorcee is The Gay Divorcee is a Cole Porter musical,
which also features. So probably not.
Yeah, so it is actually from.
I know
Top
it's
Hat.
got the Continental in it. Maybe that's what I'm thinking of. "Better Luck Next Time."
"Better Luck Next Time" is not from Top Hat. It's an Irving Berlin number.
Right. "Latins Know How."
This is not from Top Hat. It's
topical again with the Pope.
Yeah. Well, it's a very it's a throwaway number, which was obviously languishing at the bottom levels of some stage musically.
They just needed to pop something in there at that point. And then, of course, and we're sort of heading to the final straight here. The last three numbers is "Let's Face the Music and Dance," extremely famous number.
Yes, but not from Top Hat. It is a Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers number, but it comes from, I think it's "Follow the Fleet."
Ah, okay.
Which is a bit later. It's a couple of years.
The penultimate number in the show is "Outside of That I Love You," which I've never heard of.
I had never heard of it, but it's an absolute corker. In fact, it's the one that feels most like a Cole Porter number. It's basically it's the secondary comedy couple. Yes. As you'd expect, having their love song. They have a slightly antagonistic relationship, so it's
I'm guessing
you're rubbish, you're useless, but outside of that, I love you.
It's a sort of like "Just My Bill" sort of,
well, that's sentiment. That's properly meant. This one's.
I know,
ironic,
but this one's exactly. Yeah.
But this one is, look, here's a list of all your many faults, but I love you anyway.
Okay,
you loser.
And then finally, this number called "Finale."
Yes,
that seems to crop up in pretty much every musical there is.
Indeed,
whenever it's not titled as "Finale Ultimo." Okay, anyway, so good. That's the restructure of the score. I don't know anything about the plot of Top Hat. Again, in 10 seconds.
I wouldn't worry your pretty little head. But it's essentially Jerry Travers because he's Fred Astaire. He's a dancer. He's a big hit on Broadway. He's brought over to London.
One of those.
Yeah, he's brought over to London and he staying in a hotel.
Yeah,
and he accidentally, by tap dancing in his room to "You're Easy to Dance With," where he dances with a hat stand, which once again is lifted straight out of the Fred Astaire films, although not an RKO one. He wakes up the beautiful woman in the flat downstairs, who's obviously the Ginger Rogers character.
Yeah.
She complains, and then it's all muddled. She doesn't realise she mistakes Jerry for the manager who's brought him over, who's also staying in the same room. And it turns out that her best friend is married to the manager.
Anyway, in the end,
it's a big old muddle. But in the end, can you imagine the Fred Astaire character and the Ginger Rogers character do indeed get together?
And is he a great success on the stages of London or wherever he's on?
Well, actually, that's a MacGuffin.
Oh right,
that's how he comes.
It's actually the love story then is the main focus.
Yeah, and they fly to Italy.
Hang on.
Well, basically, he's doing a show, but they fly down for the weekend to Italy,
right?
Which is where all the entanglements briefly get worse and then briefly get better.
It's a bit like when they go to Cuba in Guys and Dolls. visuals.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes,
for no apparent reason except rhythm and music.
Yes,
Yes,
okay,
exactly.
fine.
A dance sequence.
Right, okay,
Yeah.
great.
But basically, he moves from a London hotel to an Italian hotel, so it needn't have bothered.
And you've seen the film, the original
Oh, yes,
film.
absolutely.
So, I mean, how does this compare?
Well, do you know, I really enjoyed this. Now, it is not an intellectual feast. However, and dance is also something that's mostly a closed book to me. I'm not vastly fascinated by dance, with one exception. We touched upon it with the Mikado. I love tap dancing. Absolutely adore tap dancing. And Fred Astaire is the only one of the classic dancers I find a lot of time for, because a lot of his movement is tap.
Yeah.
You know, he's not like Gene Kelly, who throws himself across the floor. And
Yeah.
as fun enough, there's a later Fred Astaire musical film called Silk Stockings, where they make fun of what you see on the. It's called Stereophonic Sound. It's about films being broadcast in huge screens and having to be much more theatrical to fill the space.
Yes, yes.
And it said, it says the audience won't care unless the dancer's throwing himself across the stage on his knees.
Yeah.
Which is what Gene Kelly used to do. Whereas Fred was a bit more elegant, dancing,
Yeah.
ballroom, that kind of stuff, tap. I like all of that. It doesn't. It's not so much. It's dance that doesn't speak. It's not trying to tell you anything. It just wants to look nice. So that works at my level, I'm afraid. And of course, once again, tap gives every song an extra oomph, I find.
Yes.
It just overlays another
Gives
rhythm.
you something to do when there's no lyrics left.
Yeah, pretty much, absolutely. So yeah, it's a hugely successful
Could
adaptation.
sing, could dance, and could act,
could act
and
a little,
could dance a little. Yeah. Okay.
It's a remarkable stage version of a film, and I'm surprised it's taken this many years. I mean, what?
I suppose. I mean, you mentioned Singing in the Rain. I mean, that has been revived many, many times. I saw it. I mean, talking of your experience with the Mikado, Singing in the Rain, I saw back in the 80s with Tommy Steele in it.
Crikey!
Yes, exactly.
He's still doing it, isn't he?
Well, I don't think he's doing it this time around, but
oh no, he's just done Scrooge. Hasn't he?
He just did Scrooge. Yes,
Yeah.
He's graduated up to the Albert Finney part.
It's
But,
Adam Cooper was doing it at least for a while. In
I
Ireland.
believe so,
I don't
yes.
think he's doing it now.
I know, in fact, the same anecdote about the Tank of Rain has been circulating in theatrical gossip as was being told about Tommy Steele. Just in case you don't know it, listeners, can we do this?
Yes.
There's usually, whenever there's a production of Singing in the Rain, it seems, what you need for Singing in the Rain to work is you have to do the famous sequence with the title song,
Well,
in which
in
you
other
have
words,
to have
rain.
real rain on stage,
Yeah.
which means that you have to have a massive tank of water up above the stage, which is a very logistically and technically risky thing to do, because obviously you've got electrics and lights in between and all that
So
sort
who
of
wants
thing.
a tank over your head?
Well, exactly, yeah. So, but anyway, the technical difficulty is not the thing. Basically, there's usually a story about some member of the cast, and usually it's the leading man, being terribly unpopular with the technical crew, who then take later in the run to relieving themselves in this very large tank, so that when the rain comes down... Yes, exactly. I suspect it's entirely untrue in all circumstances, but I definitely heard the anecdote about Tommy Steele in the 80s, and I've heard it. I've had it repeated to me as if it were a fresh new. Well,
Oh, really?
Well, it's not fresh new. That's the wrong word. As if it were, as if And I suspect it's just mere urban legend. But I wouldn't want to be Adam Cooper anyway, just in case.
No, well, you know something's wrong when after performance everything smells of kidney soup. But taking us back to Top Hat, I adored it. Now, I must tell you, at the time I went...
Minging in the rain, sorry.
Yeah,
Usually what you do afterwards. There's a pun there.
We didn't see the main Jerry.
Sorry, the reason I was mentioning Singing in the Rain, apart from to get that anecdote in, was you mentioned it's surprising that this hasn't been done, but actually possibly the reason is that Singing in the Rain has always been there for producers to go back to, and is a slightly better known title. So this is in a way, had to wait until now.
A bit of a punt. It's taken 80 years nearly to make it onto stage, which I find phenomenal.
Yeah.
Funny enough, I've never been interested in seeing Singing in the Rain on stage. I love it as a film. I just can't see what doing it on stage would add. No. Whereas this has got a bigger score, and the story is so light in this one, so fluffy.
Yeah,
it's entirely you don't go and see it for the narrative.
You see it for the spectacle, clearly.
Yes, I feel like Nick Hudson when I say that. But yes, it's a spectacle piece. If you want to see a lot of people dancing, and it's so nice. I'm a fan of 1920s, 1930s music anyway. And I have a lot of recordings from that period, but of course they're not high fidelity recordings. They're not hi-fi.
No,
they are old. Well, they're not quite acoustic recordings, but they're early electric recordings from the 30s. So everything's just that little bit more muffled.
Yeah,
if you go to the stage, the orchestra are playing proper orchestrations.
Yes.
As it would have sounded.
You mean they don't put cotton wool all over the instruments just to recreate that authentic 20s sound?
Absolutely. Have you ever seen the size of a piano mute? But yes, exactly. And that's also lovely as well. You think this is what it must have been like to go to a show in the 1920s. In fact, that's possibly its great success. It's almost a revival of a 30s show.
Yes, it's newly minted.
Yeah, it's a newly minted, but it doesn't feel ersatz in the way that some of them do.
Yeah. Because there's also sort of 20s, and again, Cole Porter is perhaps the sort of chief culprit here, I suppose. I mean, Anything Goes is revived very frequently. There have been a lot of Gershwin revivals, and indeed Gershwin jukeboxes, haven't there? There was sort of, was it Crazy for You? It's a Gershwin jukebox musical.
That's right, based on Girl Crazy, but with lots of stuff added.
So for people who like that kind of thing, I suppose, again, that's what's been sort of fulfilling there.
But this is better than those, because I always go to see those, but I'm always slightly disappointed, because actually what they do is they muck them around a bit too much.
Right.
Whereas this one is actually quite faithful to the... Apart from adding new songs, it's pretty faithful to the original film.
Okay. Well, there we are.
And I would just briefly like to pay tribute to the chap I saw playing the Jerry role. It's supposed to be Gavin Lee. He's the current chap in the role, but he was not there that night, so we had the understudy, whose name was Alan Burkett, and he was brilliant. We didn't realise until it was all over that he wasn't the lead actor, but he was the understudy. He was phenomenal. So I'd just like to say that, because it is worth saying that you can step in, and sometimes you just get that little extra oomph, I think. Because
they really want to make it count that night.
Not get it wrong.
Better than a Tuesday evening with the principals, perhaps.
Yes.
Splendid. So that's Top Hat, and that's finished now, or is that...
No,
that continues to run?
Opened last summer and has no signs at the moment of closing. And I would suggest very strongly that people give it a whirl at the Aldwych.
At the Aldwych Theatre. On Aldwych, I believe.
Very much so.
Very well thought through.
Yes.
That was, wasn't it?
They know where it is, which is handy.
Top Hat.
And I should just say briefly, it was such a good performance that somebody had a stroke in the audience in the second act. What a cruel man you are, Tim.
Yes,
no, honestly, they did. As it happened, I was with a group of people, including 2 nurses. And we were in the stalls, and then halfway through the second act, somebody started gurgling. And of course, people start to look round, and the ushers all ran towards it, and we suddenly realised something was going on.
Yes.
And so up jumps these 2 nurses from my little contingent, went over to assist. This poor gentleman was helped out, and there was an ambulance waiting afterwards. So he never got to find out what happened. But if you're listening, sir, I can tell you that it all ended happily, except for you. Musical talk.
So talking of musicals where you've only got enough plot for about 15 minutes, you've recently seen some which actually do compress the entire thing into, I think it was 15 minutes or thereabouts.
Yes, I went to a very interesting sort of showcase, really, I'd describe it, because it only lasted for about an hour, and it was at the Landor Theatre. It ran for a couple of nights. It was part of their bite-sized series.
The Landor, for those who haven't heard us mention it before, is a tiny little fringe theatre which is up in, is it Shoreditch sort of way?
It was a long walk, because I went to Clapham Knoll.
Sorry, it's in South London. I was mixing it up with the Rosemary Branch, and and they do a lot of very interesting revivals, don't they?
They do.
Of lots of different musicals,
as
well as new musicals too. Yeah. So these are new ones, obviously.
Yes, they were new. It was a series of songs. It basically was 3 mini musicals. By Michael Gordon Shapiro, and some other songs to make it up to the hour, essentially. So each mini musical lasted about 10 to 15 minutes,
yes,
plus a few songs. Fun enough, including the Valley song from Jet Set Go.
Oh yes, I remember that.
Yeah,
yes.
so it's Brunger and Cleary. Is it Brunger or Brunger and?
I don't know. Actually, I've never asked him.
Well, I've always called it Brunger and Cleary, and I'm very sorry. And that went down marvellously. So there were lots of standalone songs, both sincere and comic, plus 3 mini musicals. I hadn't really been to see any mini musicals, but there's a sort of trend I've noticed in the last few years of mini musicals taking place. There's been a series on BBC Radio 4 of 15-minute musicals, normally faintly satirical.
Yes. They usually star someone as Nick Clegg and another as David Cameron. That was what I heard the other day.
Yeah.
There was a Michael Howard and Anne Widdecombe one some years ago as well, I remember.
Yeah, but basically you take a tiny little spat in politics and then you write a 15-minute show about it.
Yes.
I think Alexander Bermange, if I pronounce his name rightly, writes a lot of those or is involved in those. So there's this trend, it's been on the radio and people are doing it. Now, I tell you what was interesting. It was my first experience. I wasn't certain what to expect. And I must say, whilst they were perfectly accomplished, I'm not impressed as a genre.
Okay.
And the reason I'm not impressed as a genre is because they haven't got enough narrative to carry them. And can you really have an integrated score with 3 songs?
Well, this is very interesting you say enough narrative, because, I mean, you would expect in 50, particularly in a musical context, I mean, you can certainly tell a story in 5 seconds, 10 seconds, whatever, a very short amount of time. That's certainly possible, as we've learned from Tom and Jerry cartoons. But
yes, all right.
So it's interesting you say not enough narrative rather than say too much, or trying to do something.
I suppose what I'm trying to say is when you see 3 on the trot, you can see the formula, which is introductory song setting up environment.
Yes.
Second song aspiration. Third song,
which is true of most musicals anyway.
Yeah. Third song, complication. And then if there's a 4th song, it's the resolution, or you went back, which then cut into, or segue into a revival of the first song.
Yeah.
Or you don't have that 4th song and you resolve the plot in narrative terms, and then you go to a revival.
Yes.
Or,
So give us an example of one of the ones that you saw, just so we can understand that in
a nutshell.
Abstract terms.
Yeah, it was an interesting conceit, nice little science fiction-y thing, really. There was this person she was complaining that she always has good luck. She's never had any bad luck in her life. Everything has gone really well. Nothing ever breaks down. Yep. Everything is fine.
Which
she's a bit
clearly
fed up with
sets
that.
the premise up, yes.
And I wish I could have a more miserable life.
Yeah.
Slightly. I mean, it's an odd thing, but you buy it as here's an interesting conceit.
Yeah.
Then you had. She comes home from work early one day because her boss has given her the afternoon off.
Yes.
Such good luck. And she discovered there's a man in the house fixing her loo or bathroom or something.
Okay.
And it turns out that this man has spent his entire life devoted to make
life
perfect,
run smoothly.
Absolutely.
Yes. Okay.
And then there's the will they, won't they. He's obviously smitten by her, but is she smitten with him? Well, no, she's not, because it's all a bit creepy. So, he leaves the house and that looks like that's going to end.
I'd be fine. I'd just say, carry on. Fix the loo, see you. Well, I probably won't see you again.
Well, I think the conceit was, now that they've seen each other, they would have to get married, or if she was able to reciprocate his feeling for her, they would pair up. They didn't, so he leaves,
yes.
And that seems to be the end of that relationship. And he's obviously now for having a certain amount of bad luck. And the denouement was someone comes up at the end, and it turns out that they are the person who's been trying to fix the good luck for the person who's been fixing the good luck. Like, everyone's got one. Everyone's got their own fairy godmother, if you like. For want of better. So that was a nice little conceit.
So the premise is that everyone has their guardian angel, and that resolves the thing. So.
Well, it doesn't resolve it, but that's the ending.
Oh, I see. Well, maybe that was the problem. It just ended and didn't resolve.
But what you don't get. You get songs which follow the narrative, which obviously there can't be any subplot, so you go from A to B fairly quickly. And whilst the songs were beautifully competently written, there was nothing wrong with the songs. It doesn't feel like an integrated score because there wasn't enough variety for you to be able to notice that just simply the verse of one was similar to the chorus of another, and all those old tricks of making a score more integrated. It wasn't. It was 3 songs. So apart from, what integrated it was the fact they all came from the pen of one person.
Oh, no, that's not good. Yeah, okay. I mean, given that they're so compact and compressed, one would imagine there should be a lot of musical coherence to these things.
Well, you can't help but wonder why the whole thing isn't sung through, in a sense, if it's only 15 minutes. Which would certainly make it integrated in the sense it would only be one piece, almost. So
what else did you see
in that
sequence of...
I saw another one which... it was an attempt to do a Gilbert and Sullivan style musical in 15 minutes.
Right. In a reduced Shakespeare sort of a way, or?
No, it still had a fullish cast.
Okay.
It was a little semi-repertory, if you like. There was probably about 10 people, and one of them would sing.
I mean, there was a plot the size of a Gilbert and Sullivan plot?
No, very much smaller than the plot. Size plot. Basically, here's an HMS ship. So it was a Victorian warship with an incompetent captain and an extremely competent sort of sniper, really, actually, who are being terrorised by a female pirate. But every time the pirate comes by, she's able to board them because the sniper doesn't ever seem to be able to hit her. And it turns out that they love each other.
Yes. Okay, fine.
And that's pretty much it.
That's it.
Yes,
okay,
yeah.
I mean, it does. Yes.
It has a Gilbertian ending in the sense that when this is all revealed, that she sort of reveals herself always to have never been. She's not an evil pirate; she's a good pirate, and so she joins the she joins the ship. Having like the pirates in the Pirates of Penzance, they reveal themselves to be loyal subjects of the Queen. So
when things like this are put on, like the 15-minute musicals, what do you think is the purpose of that?
showcasing.
Yeah. So
I wouldn't pay, personally, and people might, but I wouldn't pay to see an evening of mini musicals. And I'm not convinced, from what I've seen, I'm not convinced and heard that it's a genre that I would pursue.
Right. Okay.
That's in no way to criticise the composers and people involved. I would just like to see them do
because
bigger shows.
A lot of the people who train in musicals, often this is the sort of exercise they're given. Certain people on certain courses, they would before they take a run up at a sort of quote full length piece, they might do a 5-minute or a 10-minute or a 15-minute show, and that's a very and so they often a lot of people are leaving their courses with that as their showcase material, and clearly it's not going to get produced in the in that sort of way. So it's got to go somewhere, I guess.
Oh, I see. Well,
or they just have to give up and write another show, or write a full-length show.
But at the end of the day, that's the format that has historically always lasted, isn't it? You go and if I go to the theatre of an evening, I expect to see a 2-act at least musical.
You don't think that YouTube might see people? I mean, shorter things have been gone out there and been more successful. Famously, Dr. Horrible's sing-along blog was I can't remember, it was a half an hour or whatever it was. I can't remember, or 45 minutes in total, three episodes. Yeah,
but there's not to say there aren't the possibilities of breakout. I accept that. But actually, let's face it, there have been several series of 15-minute musicals on Radio 4, and I don't know anyone, apart from you and me, who's ever heard one.
No, that's true, yes.
And that's on Radio 4, which is Britain's...
And I don't know anyone who's liked them.
No, but let's face it, BBC Radio 4 is Britain's premier spoken word radio station. It's not a music station. If you want to listen to plays and musicals, that's where you'll go.
Yeah.
And the fact that it just hasn't made any impact there, I can't see how it could then, really. I mean, you're right. Someone might put one on YouTube or animate it, and that's lovely, and it might have an individual success. But I don't think, as a genre, it's going anywhere.
Okay, I think possibly that is where it will have a future. That's my view.
On the internet.
Yeah, I think so. I think the theatre, the idea of unless we go back to a sort of revival of the variety nights, that often did used to characterise an evening at the theatre back in the early part of the 20th century. You'd have a series of a scene and a sketch in the dramatic.
A sketch
sense.
with some songs in, which is essentially what this is a traditional thing, of course.
Exactly, yeah. But those have died out very much ever since variety sort of.
And when Crackerjack came off the television for children, let's be honest.
Exactly. Fell to pieces, and there was no more Morecambe and Wise, and that was pretty much the end of them. But maybe they'll come around.
I think animation might be good for that kind of thing, because you could animate a 15-minute thing very easily.
It strikes me that if that's not happening out there already, which I think it probably is, then yes, it will. So 15-minute musicals, not a very long-running phenomenon, as it were.
No, I'm afraid this is where I think Andy Warhol might be wrong. They have their 15 minutes of fame while they're on.
Yes. Okay, well, it's been fascinating to cruise between the very old, as in the Gilbert and Sullivan, to the not quite so old, as in the Irving Berlin, and finally to the very, very new indeed, and very, very short indeed.
Yeah. And reflecting the very,
Everything
very old.
seems to be getting shorter and shorter and less likely to run as we've gone on. So it's a tale of sad and sorry decline, basically, that we've traced in this episode.
Pretty much our life story as well.
Well, I'm afraid so. So before we commence our sad and sorry decline into...
commence? I'm well in.
It's probably time for us to call time on this particular episode of Musical Talk. Thank you very much for joining us. As I may have mentioned at the beginning, I've been Tim Sayward for this entire duration of this, and for 15 minutes we had also Thos Ribbits, when you actually add up all the syllables.
Hello, goodbye. One of those may be applicable. This episode of Musical Talk was presented by Tim Sayward and Thos Ribbits, and edited by Thos Ribbits. Copyright Musical Talk 2013. And why not go along to our website and listen to previous episodes at www.musicaltalk.co.uk. And now, oh dear, outtalks.
Welcome to Musical Talk, dear listener, and how lovely to speak to you again, and how lovely to hear from you, or it would be if we were actually having a conversation, which of course we're not. My name is... Oh, hang on.
Like a glass or something.
Oh, God.
Do you want to have a second crack at that?
Yes, I will. Welcome to another edition of Musical Talk. My name is Tim Sayward, and how lovely it is to be back here again, and how lovely to be talking to you, or at least I would be very happy about it if we were in fact having a conversation rather than just me taking part in a monologue. Right, one more time. Welcome to Musical Talk. It's lovely to be back. My name is Tim Sayward and I'm here with Mr. Thos Ribbits.
That's Sir Thos Ribbits! One day.
Pope Thos Ribbits I'm having. Oh, I mustn't do topical gags. Are you saving these?
No, this one will go out next week. So
right, well, let's do that same thing again.
But Richard Angus was the original Mikado.
He's wearing a duvet.
In this version, with a shoulder handkerchief, but pocket handkerchief.
Yeah, shoulder handkerchief.
Yes, he's a big man. So he does the comic roles over and over again, and I've had the privilege of working with him at the Cadogan Hall, actually,
yes.
Ladies and gentlemen.
All right.
Drop that name. Took over from Eric Idle in the original run as Coco. And he was in
a
it.
cocoa pudding.
Yes, if you like.
Do go on.
I'm trying to. And
well, so that is the Mikado, the Jonathan Miller revival. I assume we can look forward to it in another 25 years' time, and
all points in between.
Please do mark your calendars for.
It's actually the original Eric Idle is available on DVD
2037.
if anyone particularly wants to see what they've been missing.
Okay. Moving backwards, actually, to a classic Irving Berlin musical, and this is obviously the nth revival rather than the first one of this particular show. Oh, really?
Mm.
Okay, well in that case, I'll better do that introduction again.
And don't forget, it's also going backwards and forwards, because actually this comes, it's after the Mikado was written, but before this production.
Okay, all right, well, let's try and do that.
It's 34, I think. I've written the words Quetish Queen, but I've realised that's a different show.
All right.
Well, that's also be true, but that's also true. But I mean, let's face it, Radio 4 is Britain's premier speak radio station.
Do you want to take another run off at that sentence? Premier speak type lips
moving
noise
words.
microphone station.
But well, that won't be going into the outtakes.
No.